IndyFreethought.com, Central Indiana's voice of reason.
Welcome to the first video edition of the Indy Freethought show. We were recording at the Center for Inquiry, Indiana, so I'd like to thank the Center for Inquiry for allowing us this space to do our show. I'm Steve Dewar, and with me in the studio is Craig Gosling, who is Darwin's lovable basset hound, Reba Boyd-Wooden, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Inquiry, Indiana, and our special guest co-host, Desmond Wood. So Desmond, tell us a little bit about your background.
My background, I was born and raised here in Indianapolis, Indiana. I grew up in the Butler-Tarkington neighborhood. I spent a great deal of time at Our Savior Lutheran Church as a brainwashed Lutheran. I was an acolyte, so I performed those rituals. After some years, I dibbled and dabbled into drugs as a teenager and was affiliated with the GD gang here in the city, and dropped out of high school as a freshman. So that's my pre-adult life in a nutshell. But then I embraced Islam in 2000 by way of an individual named Abdullah, and practiced Islam for 5 years and traveled throughout the country and went to Saudi Arabia and Libya. And then I met some students of esoteric thought here on the west side of the city. And then I stumbled upon the CFI. That's my journey, intellectual journey, mental journey in a nutshell.
Yesterday was designated as Day of Solidarity for Black atheists throughout the world, and I'd like to ask Desmond to make a few comments about that.
Sure. So I'm glad that we have a Day of Solidarity, and we'll be having future events throughout the country, because it's not easy being atheist or even agnostic as an African American. Given the fact that atheists make up, 10 to 15%?
5, maybe.
5%. So then technically I'm part of the 1% in America, the broke 1%. Economically that is, but intellectually and mentally wealthy 1% here in the States. But I am officially coming out that I'm a proud atheist. Technically all atheists were agnostic because we can't prove or disprove the existence of a deity. But I have no concern or interest in religious notions about life and the universe and so on.
So he's announcing publicly for the first time here. You heard it here, folks.
Right. I'm out the closet. I'm atheist. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I was a Christian. I was a Muslim. Been there, done that.
It's an evolution of sorts.
Right. Evolution of my intellect, the evolution of my psyche.
Okay, and Desmond, you brought several books along that you've been reading, and would you like to tell us about some of those?
Sure. Well, given that this is Black History Month, the end of Black History Month, that is, the shortest month of the year, which is a problem, But hopefully we will study great African Americans year-round.
You get an extra day this year.
You get an extra day? Yeah, that's right, the 29th. We have until Wednesday, technically. So we'd like to talk about an individual named John G. Jackson, who wrote many books, and this is one of the most pivotal books in my transition to atheism, and that's Christianity Before Christ. He was also influenced by Kersey Graves, whose book I don't have, who wrote The World's 16 Crucified Saviors, published by American Atheist Press, Cranford, New Jersey. There's a brief bio here. John G. Jackson was an educator, lecturer, author, and man of principle. He was born on April 1st, 1907, into a family of Methodists. In old age, he averred he had been an atheist since he became old enough to think. The family minister once asked him when he was small, quote, "Who made you?" After some thought, he replied from his own realization, quote, "I don't know." He lived for 50 years in New York City, 1932 to 1977, lecturing at the Ingersoll Forum, hence Robert Ingersoll, a dynamic speaker, of the American Association for the Advancement of Atheism, 1930-1955. So he was a pioneer in the field of African American studies, and he taught courses from 1971 to 1980 at Rutgers University, New York University, Northeast Illinois University, and his books include Introduction to African Civilizations, A Guide to the Study of African History, Ethiopia and the Origin of Civilization, Man, God, and Civilization, and the best-selling Pagan Origins of the Christ Myth.
I wondered if that's still available from bookstores.
Well, that's a good question. This may be a rare book I have in my hand. So it's definitely priceless in the info that it contains. And I also have here Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust by John Henrik Clarke. I don't know if he officially came out as an atheist or agnostic, but he definitely wasn't a fan of organized religion, particularly Islam. He had some issues with the Nation of Islam as well as Dr. Ben, but they were all brilliant, and all their works are indispensable. And also Critical Lessons in Slavery and the Slave Trade by John Henrik Clarke, who taught at New York City College. African Origins of the Major Western Religions by Dr. Ben Yohanan, who was half Ethiopian, I believe, Haitian maybe. Definitely he has ancestry in the Caribbean islands.
They sound like interesting books.
Yeah, they're very interesting
Can
books.
I borrow them all for about a month or two?
You can hold on to them. Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth. And I believe it you...
Yeah, we're familiar with
Yeah,
it.
you're familiar with Joseph Campbell here.
Yeah.
You study his works, and you may even have a few of his books there in the library.
Uh-huh. I'm sure that's just a small part of your library, though.
Well, it's growing. I'm a humble library.
Well, you're always welcome to use our library, too. We have a lending library here, and that'll keep you busy
Appreciate
for
that.
at least a month or two.
No, more like a lifetime of learning here. Students of knowledge.
Well, I think at least
Lifelong.
at one time you were not only reading, but you're doing some writing. Isn't
Yes,
that
I
correct?
actually brought, well, I don't know if we can get up during the show, but I have a rough draft of the book that I'm working on in my bag over there. Okay. The Artistry of a Scribe, a collection of poems and essays. I've been working on this book for 8 years, and people keep asking me, when are you going to finish? So I decided to remove certain chapters and publish this thing for once. But there's a chapter that I decided to delete on the religion of Islam, simply because I'm wise enough to know that I could be killed here in the city for being an apostate. I'm serious. There are people that put a hit out on Brother Dez, and I say he has to go. That is the Shaitan. He is teaching that Allah is a concept invented by Bedouin Arabs in the desert. And you know, that warrants a death threat or maybe even actually a hit out on me.
Just
So I'm
say,
going to remove that.
instead of claiming that for your own quote, why don't you just claim that some people think that?
Yeah, some people think that. I'll say that. So that will be maybe published in the future, but I would like to share a poem.
Wonderful.
Finding it here. That's not it. Be patient with me here.
Are these free verse poems or rhyming poems or?
Yes, most of them are because I have a background as a hip hop artist, as a
Oh,
lyricist. So you'll hear a lot
okay.
of that in some of these. But
you could
some of them
probably sing these too then
Yeah.
as well.
Now, my voice has changed, and now I don't know how well I can carry a tune these days. Too much bass in my voice, and I still try to sing as when I was a teenager. That doesn't work. This is called The Exuberant Life. I am. I exist in a world of profound diversity, adventure, and perplexity. This is not merely an objective world of galaxies, suns, planets, moons, and an Earth teeming with various life forms, but also a world augmented by qualia. It is likewise a mental world sustained by my own subjectivity. Humanity arose as all other animals on this planet. Humankind, complex animals, are a testament to nature's selectivity. The tumultuous, merciless forces of nature, the oppressive demands of men upon other beings, the daunting task of attempting to make sense of our existence in an ineffable universe has challenged the strength of many minds' sanity and lulled others towards lunacy. Alas, ingenuity, solidarity, and intellectual depth merge into a most splendid magnanimity. Humanity domesticated plants and animals, built homes out of nature, and have learned to express the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology in a language that speaks of elegance, mystery, and complexity. The religious approach to life offers convenient yet insufficient answers to our deepest questions. Religion and astrology appeal to our intrinsic credulity and supernatural associativity. Science sheds light on fascinating aspects of our precious mental and empirical world. It also both reveals and predicts an unfathomable, incredible eschatology, the exuberant life.
Ah,
Very good, Desmond.
well
That's very
expressed.
good. Very good.
So that's one of the poems that will be in the book, and a few of the chapters, excluding the one on Islam, of course, for now.
I'd love
includes-
to. I'd love to review that. It sounds like a great
Maybe I'll
book.
let you edit. You'll be the editor of that. I know
Be-
you're a great editor and poet yourself.
Be
and
glad
author.
to.
And the chapters will include anthropology, an objective study of humanity, religion, mythology, and symbolism, ancient Africa, the genesis of belief systems, civilization, and humanity. This is my favorite chapter because it's no secret I have, as an African American, a special love for Africa and fellow Africans and Africans in the diaspora. And the last chapter, the origin and essence of Christianity, which many people have dealt with. So this would be a little pebble in the pie, you know.
Yeah, Desmond, I have
In light of the greater
I have
works.
a blog site. I'd love to take some of that information and some of your poems and publish it on the internet.
Sure,
If that's
Sounds good.
agreeable to you.
I'm game.
Great.
Kind of a spin-off to the Day of Solidarity. I just found out yesterday that African Americans for Humanism, headed by Debbie Goddard at CFI, is planning a conference in Chicago the first weekend in May. So if there are any African Americans, or I guess anybody, but particularly African Americans listening,
Yes.
who would really like to get involved, it'd be a great chance to meet other African American humanists, atheists, agnostics, whatever they want to call themselves, in a national gathering in Chicago. So you might like to put May 4th to the 6th on your calendar, just
Yes,
in case.
Come out and support.
So we're hoping that Desmond can make it there.
I will
that
be there,
conference.
that's for sure.
Desmond, I have a question. In fact, we all have this question. You've
I
probably
love
heard,
questions, you know that. So.
You've probably heard this before, that among our membership here, we feel we would like more African Americans, and we don't really have as many as we would like. And so I wonder, what do you think the reasons are that atheism, agnosticism, free thinking is not as popular in the African American community as in the white community?
I see. Well, for one, it's the fear of losing friends and your family shunning you, because it's not popular, given that the black church plays such a crucial role in our history here in America and the transatlantic slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
That was our social club. You know, the preacher was the psychologist, he was the educator, he was the entertainer. It was the lights, camera, action every Sunday, or a few days. Even though I was raised in the Lutheran church, I have no experience in the Baptist tradition, but I can relate.
So that was the
to that
first
experience.
tradition the black slaves had. When
Yes,
they
and
came
initially
there.
it was a covert. It was a means of
Controlling them.
control, but also African Americans here and throughout the diaspora, they would practice voodoo, juju, and other African spiritual traditions under the guise of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And they would actually reinterpret these symbols, or they saw in Jesus, for example, Orishanla, who is a Christ-like figure in the Yoruba tradition in Nigeria, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be interesting for people to look
So
him
they
up.
mixed Christianity
Orishanla.
with some of the local
Yes.
Caribbean, South American
right, Nigerian
religions.
and traditions in the Ivory Coast and Senegal and Guinea and Benin.
Mm-hmm.
You can probably see that a lot, I imagine, in the music that's used in the traditional black
Yeah,
churches.
yeah, exactly. The polyrhythms, the drum is crucial. Call and response.
Mm-hmm.
The deep, profound emotional depth of the sermons in the black church. No one can take away from the greatness there. And it served a role, but it's time to move on. As me and Donald talked about on the phone earlier, it's time for us to evolve, to progress.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any influence of Santeria in the early slave days?
Yes, I read about that. That's not an area that I'm knowledgeable in, though.
Okay.
But it definitely played a role.
Yeah, as
And
far
he deals with that in this book, by the way, here, The African Origins of Major Western Religions.
that sounds like an interesting book.
It is. I'll find a quote here in the midst of this show. There are a few of them to share. Some highlights.
Well, I think religions have mixed throughout the history of religions, and Islam and Buddhism and Christianity are kind of mixtures of religions that came before it.
Exactly.
And so it's not surprising that Catholicism and evangelical Protestantism has mixed with some of the local religions in the Caribbean, Central, and South American countries.
Yeah,
as well.
exactly. And you'll find this in the Middle East and in Southeast Asia among Muslims who have mixed their spiritual tradition with Islam, and definitely in Sufism, which was the first branch of Islam that I was introduced to, by the way, the Sufi path, tariqah.
Yeah, Islam has branched off into many different sects. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Well, how does Sufi differ from, say, Shia and Sunni?
Well, the Shia tradition, well, that's a whole nother complex subject there.
If you can put it in a nutshell.
Yes, let's say it right.
If that's possible.
If that's possible to put it in a nutshell. You have the Shia who praise the family of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and you have the Sunnis who embrace all of the companions. The Shia basically favor Ali and the family of the Prophet, believing that they are the true inheritors of his tradition. Sufism, there are many scholars that deal with the origin of Sufism, and it seems to have come out of Persia, aka in modern-day Iran. And they put focus or emphasize connecting and annihilating oneself into the divine self, Allah, or the nothing, and chanting and going into ecstatic states of being through chants, which is known as dhikr circle in the Arabic language. And to remember God.
Is it true they're generally more peaceful, accommodating,
yes, and tolerant, and liberal, and open-minded?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Right. So many of them embrace the concept of evolution.
So that was your first interest was in Sufism.
Exactly. And then I became somehow, I don't know how it happened, but that's the way life is. I became ultra-Orthodox. I became affiliated with a group of brothers and sisters in a movement known as the Salafiyah, which is a spin-off of Wahhabism, the teachings of Muhammad Abdul Wahhab in Saudi Arabia, part of that kingdom. And they put emphasis on grow your beard, wear your pants above the ankle. Brother, you should pray this way, brother. This is the way you should pray. Allah doesn't hear your prayer if you don't make ablution properly and all that dogma and crazy nonsense.
So you experienced all of that.
All of that. I once was a part of that. Brother, grow your beard. That's haram. That's forbidden.
Yeah. Well,
Stock for Allah. Seek forgiveness for Allah, brother. You know that's not right.
Now, how long was it you were affiliated in some way with some form of Islam?
5 years.
And you really immersed yourself in it and learned
and
studied it, right? And did you
Arabic.
always study it with somewhat of a skeptical mind, or
no?
Did you
hook, line, and sink? That's what I'm saying. I was gullible.
Okay.
I don't know, for some reason, even though I was a skeptical person most of my life, I fell right into the belief system wholeheartedly.
What do you think appealed to you most about that?
I think it was coming from the thug life, his character, Brother Abdullah. He was very charismatic and knowledgeable and social. He was very good with interacting with people from many walks of life. There were thugs that came to the bookstore, many of whom I knew, and there were also professors and students from IUPUI and Ivy Tech that came to Tuba Cafe.
Pardon my
Tuba Cafe is the name of the
pardon
place,
my ignorance, but I'm not sure what a thug is.
That's another good question as well. What is a thug? A thug doesn't mean you have to be a killer or have been to prison to be a thug. It just basically is a form of a hippie. A nihilistic, hedonistic individual.
I thought it was a religious term, but it's not.
No, a thug is just anyone. You can be there are thugs in Africa, thugs in Asia, thugs in the Middle East.
Okay.
It's kind of a mindset, I think.
Yeah, it's a mindset. This is characterized by nihilism and hedonism, and getting high and drunk.
Not everybody in it commits horrendous crimes, but they are associated with that particular kind of culture, right?
Right.
Right.
I wasn't a killer. I wasn't a tattooed thug.
Yeah.
I just loved to get high and drink and skip classes and hang out with older people and sneak into clubs and hang out with Butler students and with.
So you think it was the kind of the community and the acceptance that drew you into it in the first place?
Yes, and their knowledge.
Yeah, the knowledge. And now,
Yeah.
do you think you were unusual in getting into it to see the knowledge part of it as far as other people get
I
into
definitely
it?
was one of the few that really took it very seriously.
Well, that's what
within
I
a few
thought.
months, I learned how to read Arabic, and then later on to speak Arabic after I met a few Arabs and Africans who were half Arab or spoke Arabic as well. And
Yeah,
picked up
because-
the language somewhat. I was never totally fluent, but I could at least hold a conversation in Arabic.
Wow.
But
And
I've
you're-
forgotten a lot.
Yeah, you're a person that when you get involved in something, you really want to study it thoroughly and find out all about it, and very intelligent and able to pick up
Thanks,
all
man.
this. I was wondering then, Desmond, you were really immersed in this, totally, it seems. So what was the pivotal event or the pivotal thing that caused you to start changing your mind about all of it?
Comparative religious studies, the works of Joseph Campbell, and the DVD in this book, The Power of Myth. Then I began to realize, wait a minute, there are parallel myths across the globe. And hence, I mentioned earlier, the 16 Crucified Saviors by Kersey Graves, who influenced John G. Jackson, who wrote Christianity Before Christ. So you have these Christ-like, prophet-like figures throughout the planet. And then you begin to wonder, who is the real author of religious texts, given that they all bear similarities and similar symbols. And I began to entertain the idea that humans, the idea that I believe in, I promote now, that the human mind is the source of religious symbols, notions, etc.
So how long did it?
Not a spook being in the sky.
So how long did it take you once you kind of started questioning to actually pull away from it?
Probably couple of years.
Did you explore any other things after leaving Islam? Any of the other Eastern religions, or?
Yes, we studied the Fourth Way, a.k.a. the work at the Nile Valley Institute, a school founded by the brilliant Clarence Muhammad. And there were two teachers there, Master Rasul and the goddess Kali, and my fellow students there. And that was over on Warman Avenue in Hallville, right in the ghetto, a beacon of light, actually. And I want to thank Clarence Muhammad for enlightening my mind and helping me deal with neurosis and psychosis. Because at that school, they teach the maxim, believe nothing, verify everything.
Really?
And that's something we can agree to, and that's our maxim as well, right? Believe nothing, verify everything. That's the scientific method, by the way.
Right, and that's now that Nile Valley Institute, that's still in existence, is it?
Not formally,
Okay.
but these are very rarefied individuals who are very learned, much more so than myself, and whom I'm indebted to because they taught me a lot and exposed me to a lot of precious, rare forms of knowledge, namely the works of George Ivanovich Gurdjieff. We'll talk about him. That's a whole nother show on the work, aka the Fourth Way, because it deals with basically the human being from a psychological and scientific point of view, namely that we have many centers, and these centers have to be harmonized for you to be an actual complete human being. The emotional center, the intellectual center, the moving center, the sexual center, and so on. Some of that may seem like pseudoscience, but if you translate it, it can fit right into the modern scientific paradigm.
So some of these
modern
people,
neuroscience and so on.
Some of these people influenced you, but
Yes.
we're kind of wondering, what have you done? Have you influenced friends or family?
I made a lot of enemies. I know that.
Well,
I made definitely a lot of enemies here.
Well, maybe that's not so bad as long as
That's part of life.
it's
you know,
not
you get
violent.
used to it. Lose
But have
friends,
you
make
influenced anybody positively, like the good things about free thinking
enemies. Oh yeah, definitely.
and so you're like we're thinking you're a model role, playing a role to influence people.
Well, that's why I'm coming out the closet now. I need to be more active. You know, me and my introversion.
Well, we need more
to
people
be
like
more
you.
extroverted at times and spread this knowledge and help others. because some people are not so fortunate to meet a Clarence Muhammad or Master Rasul or a Goddess Kali.
Are you still in contact and discuss with these people?
Yes, not as often as I would like to.
Because it sounds like they're not, like you said, they're not too far from
they're on my Facebook.
the same, the same philosophy you're.
I'm sure they would say
now,
they're
they're
free
not
thinkers.
too far away from that.
Yes, they may not say atheist because, it's a semantics game, of course.
Right.
At one point in time, you asked me about my transition. It took a while because I had issues with the term atheist, but it just simply means meaning without, theism or theist, God or religion.
Right.
That means I'm happy without it.
Yeah.
I don't need to pray to be happy. Actually, I meditate.
Now, did that group have any supernatural beliefs?
Well, they teach that we are God, that you yourself are God. And, that actually is not false from a certain point of view. Humanity has created the world we see before our very eyes. This iPhone, this mic, this table. When you're sick, you go to a doctor. When you have mental issues, or psychosis, neurosis, you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Medicine has helped my dear beloved father with his schizophrenia. If he were here right now, you wouldn't know he has schizophrenia because he seems like an ordinary individual now, a musician.
Because of medical science, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Not some spook god in the sky.
Yeah. That seems to be right on with our secular humanist philosophy, except we don't maybe like to use the term God for anything, but it's the focus on the human being. And like Robert Ingersoll said, if any of the evils of the world or anything are solved, it's man who has to do it. It's not any kind of supernatural
being.
So it sounds like just terminology maybe terminology is about the only difference in the philosophy from what you've said.
Now, by definition, aren't you a goddess? Let's look at it from the ancient Semitic point of view. I know that not in the egotistical sense, but did you bring life into this world? Yes, you have a beloved son, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. You brought into existence to help bring into existence this center here, you and others. What are the attributes of God, the creator and the destroyer? We destroy things and we create things. We're destroying the planet Earth.
Just depends on your definition of God.
Yeah, we don't don't particularly use that terminology.
We don't go around saying I'm God, I'm God like the 5% movement. There's a movement where people go around saying I'm God, what's up God? And I understand, what they mean from a certain point of view.
Right, and all of us, and Craig
if you
with
don't
all
take
his
an ego.
medical illustrations and
right, you're
Steve with his woodworking and his technology
it's
abilities,
a beautiful guitar
and music
created
abilities, etc. Right?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, so for this goddess, you have to sacrifice, but the sacrifice involves giving money to CFI.
Exactly. You have to sacrifice your child or slaughter anyone on the table. We're not going to slaughter an animal or a human being on this table.
Well, this Center for Inquiry here and along the canal in Indianapolis is a wonderful way to exchange ideas and meet with friends and have a community. And normally atheists don't have that opportunity because there's so few of us. But here, thanks to Goddess Reba, we have a meeting place. It's not a church by any means, and doesn't mean to be a church, but it's a great opportunity to listen, to learn, to express your views.
Right,
and
to party.
Yeah, well, some of that too.
Occasional parties, and have more in the future.
But so anyway, you're part of the system. Having someone like you here that has a totally different background than any of us. This is just eye-opening, really.
Well, our backgrounds might not be totally different, but he certainly brings some extra, perspective to it that the rest of us maybe don't have.
Right, from different walks of life, and we're all sitting here.
Right, and I know also Desmond's told me about that when he has customers in his taxi, he has some good conversations, right?
Many provocative conversations.
Do they start the conversation, or what do you talk about?
Sometimes they jump in, hey, how are you doing? How's your day? Where are you from?
What about a controversial exchange of words?
Let me think about that. When was the last time I had a debate with a customer in the taxi?
You might not get a tip if you debate
do things
too well.
just sort of come up as you're discussing with people, or what?
Well, I've talked to people about the issue of God, and I can see them suffering from neurosis because of their convictions and unnecessary beliefs. Mm-hmm. But I can't remember the actual debate in the cab.
Well, I'm sure you don't want to lose
Now.
business. So,
No, I mean, if I think of it during the
Desmond
conversation,
needs some
I'll mention
business,
that, you know.
so if you
my
need a
mind is
cab
blank
in
at the
Indianapolis, call Desmond, right?
moment. Right.
And he took one of our speakers back to the airport from the.
Yes, two. I took
Civic
Ron Lindsay
Day.
before.
Yeah, you have taken Ron Lindsay. That's right. And this time you
Had a
took
great
Barry Lynn,
conversation with
right?
Barry Lynn.
And you
Linked
told
up
me you
here.
had a pretty good conversation with
Oh,
Barry
yes.
Lynn
We were
on the way
talking
back
about
to
Joseph
the airport.
Stiglitz and globalization, his discontents, and the 13 Bankers, which is a heavy book that I had to put down. No.
So is that
Yeah.
the way it starts sometimes? I think you probably, from
What, pick
it
up
seems
on
to me
somebody's
that
thought
maybe while
process?
you're sitting around waiting on a fare to come or to call you or something,
I'm usually
that you're
reading
sitting there
something,
reading
right.
books, right?
Right. And I say, oh, what? No, I've read that book.
So
Something
does
like
that
and it's
start
conversation starter.
or maybe people get in your cab that are carrying books? Does that happen? And you start a conversation with that? Does that
I've
ever
had
happen?
crazy people in the taxi as well. You know, people that you have to put out.
Well, I'm
Like,
sure you
know,
have. Yeah.
One time I pulled over at Shell gas station and told the guy, get out, there's no charge. I'm sorry, but you have to go. You have to go.
Oh, I'm sure you do,
Because I
yeah.
think he was schizophrenic or something. He was
Yeah.
talking off the wall when he got in. I was like,
Some-
my radar went off. I was like, red alert. Pulled over, no charge, turn the meter off.
Yeah.
You know, here's
Some-
the Shell gas station. Take another
Some
taxi.
Muslim
from here.
cab drivers
Step.
won't carry alcohol in the cab. You know, they refuse to transport alcohol or anything that's ungodly.
Yeah, they had to change that, I think. But yeah, Barry Lynn talked about that.
Yeah,
in his
there is
talk,
some
yeah.
Muslims that won't do that. I said, I can't take you to the liquor store. But most of the Muslims here are not that extreme anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Orthodox Muslims are more liberal. That's part of the American experience. So there's a positive unconscious effect on their psyche as well. They're forced to become more liberal even unconsciously.
So you don't
Based on the
think
business they're in.
you don't think there are any extreme radical Muslims in Indianapolis?
There may
your
be
knowledge?
a few. But even the ones, I mean, some of them have re-embraced me, though, because during the Super Bowl, they allowed us to work at the airport for a few days. And I saw a few individuals there and they embraced me. And I was shocked because I thought that, you know, they would still be standoffish towards me
Now,
because
yeah,
I
these were
renounced
people.
Islam.
These were cab drivers? or
Yeah,
who?
fellow cab drivers are known for being orthodox. I mean, they grow the beard, they wear the pants above the ankle, pray 5 times a day, do everything by the book. And they still embrace me.
Wow.
Brother Saleh, that's my Muslim nickname. Brother Saleh, how you doing?
So you knew them when you were in the mosque,
Right, in the
and-
movement, but they still have a lot of love
So
for me.
they
and I
still
love
you
for
still
them
have
as well.
that's good.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
very good.
I mean, we don't speak on a regular basis, but they still, because they know I'm a student of knowledge. I love knowledge
Sure.
and learning and sharing with others, so they know they can't be wrong.
Yeah, well, that's
They just
good.
wonder, like, how could he leave after being so deep? I am an enigma. I can't deny that. How could you be so deep in Islam and then leave?
Right.
I mean, you
But
know,
then you maybe have been
that's
different
the way.
from
keep
some of
that
them
going.
were probably indoctrinated from birth almost,
Right,
weren't
from
they?
birth on up.
And
That's
you
the
weren't.
difference.
You came to it as a young adult
Right, that's the difference.
when you had your reasoning faculties.
Right, that's an excellent observation. It's harder for them.
Right.
I mean, they're from
Because
Somalia,
and
Muslim
that's all
country,
they knew.
or
That's all they know.
Mauritania, or Saudi Arabia.
Really?
Yeah.
Near 100% Islam.
Yeah.
You know, Muslim country. Somalia is 99.9% Muslim country.
Right. So it's just like somebody here who's immersed in the Christianity. It's too hard to get rid of
Right,
it.
it's too
yeah.
hard to get out
Yeah.
of.
An interesting conversation on the airplane going to Madrid. A young man who was sitting in the same row with me, and some way we struck up a conversation, and he was Muslim, and he had been raised, it was either Chicago or Detroit area, but in a Muslim family and neighborhood, and went to Muslim schools and everything there, even in the United States. But he's left it now, and I mean, mentally he's left it at least. He's not out to his family. But he said what did it for him was when he went in the United States Army. And he, for the first time, met people who thought differently than he did.
See, for the first time. Can you
And-
believe that?
Yeah.
Because, he was raised in, just immersed in the family and the neighborhood of Islam, even though he was living in the United States.
Right. Sheltered,
his,
isolated.
Yeah. One thing I thought was interesting, though, he said he couldn't say it to his parents. He couldn't tell his parents. But he said that his grandmother told him, you concentrate on your business and don't worry about that religious stuff, which I thought was kind of interesting. And you kind of wonder if the generations maybe I don't know, but chances are she may be from the Arab world. I don't know. But maybe, she's seen enough of it that she's a little more skeptical than the parents, or you never know. But I thought that was interesting. that happened. He said he had, I think, 5 brothers, and they've all, among themselves, they talk about it, and they've basically left it, but they can't come out to their parents about it. And of course, with you, you didn't have family members who were going to object to this, right? Because your family was not
they were
into
happy
it.
just to see me, doing something positive.
They were
instead of just wasting away my life,
They were
They
happy
would
when
say,
you were
right?
in the Islamic phase of your life?
Right.
Okay, yeah, because they
always look at me,
saw
"Man, you
the
changed."
negative kind
Man,
of thing.
you really changed.
So it did have some very positive effects on you.
Oh, no doubt about it. Somebody asked me, I stopped smoking. Not that I believed that smoking marijuana is a sin or is a crime or is wrong. But at the time, I stopped, which was good for my mind. I needed those nerves. I needed to stop destroying so many crucial nerve cells that are crucial to a rich, conscious life. I understand now how precious cells in our body are. And so all the drinking and smoking, I put an end to that. And I became health conscious initially as a result of being Muslim. You stop eating pork. And we know from medicinal point of view and scientific point of view that pork has, what is the trick? What's the name of the worm? Trichinosis you find in pork. It's high in sodium, very bad for black folk given our genetic history.
There are other reasons, too, for that prohibition.
Right, and that other prohibition are religious, namely that in the Bible, Jesus cast devils into spirits into swine. And that actually goes all the way back to ancient Egypt, where on the hieroglyphs, you'll see Set being cast into a swine, a pig there. So see, things like that sparked my intellect back in the day. I was like, wait a minute, there's a biblical passage that correlates to this. And in the Quran, you have the same dogma in Islam to not eat pork because it's evil. And
then you came, so you grew through this, and I know you are very health conscious now. You're a bodybuilder, right? And you got into music.
I still like grease. I still like fried chicken. I still eat greasy food and sweets at times. I'll balance it out. I was at Popeye's Chicken last week.
So there was positive who came out of this, and I'm thinking, at that point in your life, you're looking maybe for some structure.
Yes.
Which maybe you hadn't had before.
Right. And then when I found CFI, that helped a lot. That there's an actual center where you can come to and dialogue with fellow atheists, agnostics, and freethinkers and so on. And there are events, and you don't have to feel alone anymore.
I think we all go through that when we go through some kind of deconversion that we're the only one we know, and it can be kind of lonely and isolating. And it's just fortunate we have the internet now. That's how I discovered that there was a humanist group in town here, and that there was an atheist meetup. And attending both of those was it was a great experience because you can go to either the Indy Atheists or CFI events and be among like-minded people, and nothing's off the table for discussion, nothing at all. Even if you don't agree on something, you just don't have any taboo topics.
No
taboo topics.
Reba, maybe some of our listeners and viewers don't know about Sunday morning here.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could say a few words about that.
Well, Sunday morning is kind of our biggest event of the week, usually, unless we have a big outside speaker coming in. It's just kind of like a coffee house around here. People just sit around and talk about whatever they want to and drink coffee and eat donuts, and there's some pretty good conversations and some pretty hot disagreements. Sometimes everybody's civil, but people express their opinions.
If you don't like the conversation at one table, you just pick up your coffee cup and move to another table.
Yeah.
So, Desmond, is this a shameless product placement?
Not for bodybuilders, maybe. Yeah.
High fructose corn syrup.
I remember
you can't.
Yeah, I remember the first time I met you that we had a big, long conversation. And I can't remember if you called me first or if you just walked in the door. But I know we talked a long time.
I found out about the center actually from Matt Crum, so it wasn't just a true stumbling upon the CFI. Matt Crum and Ashish Das. And I saw him recently at Valley Fitness here last week, by the way. He was like, don't I know you? I was like, oh, Matt, you're the one that introduced me to CFI. And then I called you, and he was like, come on down. I'm on the canal. In fact, you met me. You said, I'll meet you on the canal.
Okay.
Made it easy for me.
Yeah.
And I've been affiliated ever since. Not as active as I would like to be.
Yeah, I know Desmond's a pretty busy young man, so he doesn't
but
get
it's
here
time
as
to make-
often
it's
as
time
we'd
to make
like
more
for
time
him to,
now.
but
between
It's
your
2012.
writing
It's a new year. It's time
we're
to
always
be more
glad to
active.
see him when he can make it.
Likewise.
Well, between your writing, your guitar lessons, your job, your bodybuilding.
I know. Sometimes I wonder how I find time for anything. You know?
That's quite a big plate
I
full.
just get it in when I can. But it's time to be more active. So this New Year 2012. Not that I believe in New Year's resolution, but if I have a resolution, it's to be more active in this community now. You know, the time is nigh, as they used to say in old English.
Yeah.
Well,
We have a battle with the conservatives. The psychic climate in America has changed.
Certainly,
Become more closed, narrow, and myopic.
certainly, if you listen to national or state events,
Exactly.
it's out there. We need everybody who can to be active and on our side.
And you've got-
Delusional candidates on the right, pretty much all of them, unless they're all, that's my own personal opinion, though, by the way.
And some of them are actively stating that the laws of the United States must comport with the Bible.
Exactly. Like, what world do you live in?
And that there's no
It's a
such thing
secular
as
country.
separation of church and state. It's not there.
Okay.
So we definitely have and the right wing side seems to be so vocal. I think all of us really need to speak up all the time.
Yes.
Let candidates and lawmakers all know our opinions on things.
Yes.
Because
Well, speaking of which, Goddess, you were at the Statehouse several times
do you want to go
and
into it?
testify. Yeah, if you can kind of summarize what you've been doing.
I would like to do that.
Yeah, the state there's a lot of things been going on in the state of Indiana that are very troubling. One thing was the Senator Cruz introduced a bill to teach creation science in science classes. I went over and testified at the Senate Education Committee against that, and sat in on and talked to some of the senators, encouraged people to write emails, and our voice was heard because Senator Skinner said on the floor of the Senate and also in the Education Committee meeting, which he is on, and Senator Skinner, by the way, opposed the bill. I think he opposed it from the beginning, and he was one of the people who helped introduce an amendment that they hoped would kill it, and he also voted against it even with the amendment. But he said in both of those meetings that he said, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've been getting a lot of emails from people who oppose this thing. I even got a letter from an atheist organization. And CFI did send an official letter to all of the members of the Senate Education Committee opposing the bill. So what happened was it passed the Senate 28-22, but the House, Speaker of the House, and the Chairman of the Education Committee decided not to even hear it in the House. I mean, these people have a lot of power if they're in those positions. I'm not so sure it's because they oppose teaching in the classrooms, but they do not want a lawsuit, and they went against it because of that. Senator Cruz's attitude is extremely troubling because I think he wanted a lawsuit. And he was quoted in the Indianapolis Star as saying that, well, we have 5 decent Supreme Court justices now. And so if this case comes up again, it's likely they will overturn the court precedents in the past that have said creationism cannot be taught, or intelligent design, or anything like that. So he's really out there as far as this thing's concerned. The other issue, which is, so that creation bill is dead for this session.
Okay.
But Senator Cruz says he will bring it up again next year.
Well, isn't
so it's
the
dead for a
precedent
year.
isn't the precedent of Kitzmiller versus Dover strong enough to discourage more of these
You would think.
bills?
You would think so, because it's a very strong precedent. And actually, the precedent against teaching creation science goes back to 1987 when it was overturned. And then they substituted intelligent design, and that got overturned, I think it's 2005, in the Dover case. So you would think. But people like Senator Cruz think that the Supreme Court has changed enough. He said we have a different Supreme Court now, that they would overturn those. I hope he's wrong. But I think one thing we have to be very mindful of is that and I can't be political, being the
We
executive
understand.
director of a not-for-profit, but we need to look out for people on whatever side of the political spectrum have these kind of attitudes, because if that particular faction would elect a president
Right.
who gets to appoint probably at least 2 seats in the Supreme Court in the next 4 years, I don't know about Cruz's. I would hope they're not that far out, but it's very dangerous out there. And then, of course, you've heard all the stuff about the anti-birth control stuff. Indiana legislature, we've got people in there that if it were up to them, you couldn't buy the birth control pill in Indiana. It's just ridiculous. And then...
is there any validity to their proposal for totally killing Medicaid and Medicare? I received an email, and I was skeptical about that. It's from the MoveOn.org.
Well, there are people, there are
please
people...
elaborate on
there are people who are totally against any kind of government health care.
Totally?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They think
Now,
it
that's
should
a
all be
serious problem.
private, and they're against Medicaid, Medicare, everything.
No love for the poor folk.
Right.
Mean-spirited.
Well, you need
Movement.
trust in God. That's all you need, really.
Well, they want it all in the private sector.
Well, and Jesus said,
We know what the private sector does well.
Jesus said,
Glucose
the
and
poor
state
you will
payment.
always have with you, and they want to make sure that that stays true.
I don't know.
Dangerous
This
ideas here.
it's very scary, and of course,
Dangerous.
one of the things too is, they're so focused on abortion, and so they want to make it so that any medical clinic, they targeted Planned Parenthood in particular, that receives Medicaid funds does not perform abortions. And there's been some unintended consequences of that, I think, even for the proponents of that, in that, at least, I'm not sure if this is totally accurate, but I heard that Wishart Hospital does not perform abortions because they're afraid of losing their Medicaid funding. Mm-hmm. And so that part's really scary. The other thing that is really scary in Indiana, and it's probably worse in Indiana than any state right now, is this voucher and choice scholarship program that's funneling taxpayer money into private schools, most of which are religious schools. And I was over there and testified about a week ago against an extension of that program, which just makes it available to more students for a longer period of time. And it's a real convoluted program because they're trying to disguise the fact that it's going to public schools. They say there is no fiscal impact to this program because the money comes from private sources. Well, here's kind of the way it works. You donate money to the scholarship fund, and you get a 50% tax deduction for it. And then that money is funneled out to students to take to the private schools. And I was just writing a blog on it. The Coalition for Public Education, we had a speaker from there at our Civic Day recently. If you really want to keep up on that, I would go to the website for Coalition for Public Education if you Google it, and get on their mailing list, join up with them, because they're a big one that's fighting this. Indiana State Teachers Association also has a lawsuit that they lost on the first round against the whole program. It's a voucher program. They try to say this choice scholarship is not vouchers. It's disguised. There's a person who wrote a book on this and refers to them as neo-vouchers. Some people have called it money laundering to get it through. The State Teachers Association suit is going to be appealed. There's other organizations that are going to join in on front of the court briefs. Looks to me like that's the only way to defeat it is a court case, because right now our legislators are just really expanding it. And another thing that troubles me is that while they're doing this and funneling that money to private schools, they are putting more and more restrictions on the public schools that they don't put on the private schools.
See, that's what I was going to ask you, actually. There are a lot of us who are ignorant about what is exactly a charter school. I know you have a strong background in education.
A charter school,
U.S. history.
It's private. Some private group can start a charter school. And if they get approved by the state, then they get, for every student who goes there, the tax money that would have gone to the public school goes to the charter school. That's a different program than the Choice Scholarship program, but it kind of works the same way. And, you know, it's just another way of doing it. And so...
Could this be a religious school with...
It could be a religious school.
Okay.
It could be a religious group that starts a school.
Anti-scientific ideas.
It could be. And see, just to show you that they don't hold any of these private schools, charter schools included, to the same standards that they do the public schools. And Senator Cruz said, you know, when he found out that the creation bill was not going through, he said, well, that really doesn't make any difference anyway, because parents can have a choice where they send their kids. Now, translated, think about that. Doesn't that mean they can send them to a school that teaches creationism and take our tax money there?
Right.
There was an interesting bill up that I sat in on because it was always came up right before the creation science bill, and it was on. It was a bill to require the teaching of cursive writing in the public schools. Now I'm